Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the sunflower oil panel. We're going to try and avoid lengthy descriptions of who we are. You can find that out in the program. And so we're going to try and get right into it. There's one or two major topics that we're going to have to discuss. I fear we might even have to argue about. But anyway, let's get started. Before we do, I'd just like to make a couple of announcements about the markets outside of sun oil. The critical one is as of this morning, the drop of or the cancellation of Argentine export taxes has now been rescinded. The government said that if we reached $7 billion of exports, registrations, I should be precise, then the export taxes would be reinstated, which has happened. Just for your guidance, $7 billion of registrations is about 30% of Argentine agricultural exports, grains, soybeans, soybean meal, and vegetable oils. So it's quite a significant change, but there is therefore a rather large amount of goods already registered for export, and so that will include new crop, obviously, from February, March onwards. Coming to our markets, the key factors outside of sun oil, just so that we keep in mind, is if we're talking about palm oil, and I know we'll get a lot more accurate numbers from other people, but just to put a bit of perspective, palm oil output for the next year is unlikely to be significantly increased. It is potentially about an increase of about 1 million tons. So nothing super significant. And of course, there is this big question, others will answer it, about what happens on the biodiesel program in Indonesia. The other major factors that we've got to bear in mind is the only other seed, for oil seed, that is producing significant increase in quantities is rapeseed, of which there will be between 5 and 6 million tons more in the world coming into the next 12 months. That is obviously about 2 to 3 million tons of oil, but it is much more complicated than simply saying there will be crush, there will be oil, because as you know, there are very strong political complications in the rapeseed market. China has banned imports of canola into China, but they are likely to allow imports of Australian canola back into China, so it will make very significant confusion. And finally, the soybeans. Probably the availability of soybeans globally for next year, and obviously we're talking about the South American crop in Brazil and Argentina, whilst area will increase, it's tough to see that there's going to be a huge increase in output as we're already at such high levels. So soybean oil availability or marginal availability will be increased, but nothing significantly. Excuse me. So that then the challenge for the veg oil market is relative availabilities, with the exception of rape oil, are nothing significant. So now we'll get into the sunseed sector, and we'll start with the crops, because that is going to be, I think, one of the most contentious aspects. Every conversation I've had about Black Sea crops so far has been complicated. So first I'm going to start with Anton and see what he has to say about the Russian crop, which seems to be anywhere from 17.5 to 20 million tons.
Good day. Good day to all the audience, and thank you very much for this opportunity to have a panel discussion. Jonathan, just to give some, I represent Russian veg oil market and sun oil market as company EFKO. In the course of the crop season 24-25, last crop campaign, total Russian sun oil export has reached almost 4 million tons. I make a round number, 4 million tons. India destination, for India, Russia exported 1.5 million tons, 1.55. So this is roughly 40% of the total export volume. So the main three countries, India, number one, 1.5 million tons, followed by Turkey, 1 million tons, and then followed by Iran, 700,000 tons. But India and Indian market remains the priority and main market for Russian sun oil export. And this volume and this share, like 40%, has been grown very fast and substantially within the last 2-3 years. Last season, we had a sunseed crop clean weight around 18 million tons. This season, nowadays, I think a kind of a consensus forecast between main players, main crushers in the Russian market. Before coming to the conference, I made a kind of a questionnaire form, having talked to some players, crushers. So 18.3 million tons is a consensus forecast for this crop season. Unfortunately, we have to reduce sunseed crop forecast despite expanded and despite record sunseed planted acreages in May-June 2025 up to 12 million tons. We now end up with the crop similar to last year, 18 million tons. We have not seen better yields. Weather conditions, drought conditions have been quite severe in July, August. Partly application of local seeds, Russian seed materials hybrids, made its negative effect together with weather conditions. So, then as a kind of resume, Jonathan, we work with 18 million tons of sunseed crop. This will give us 4 million tons of sun oil export in the next campaign, 25-26. And I assume we may expect that the same volume between 1.5 up to 2 million tons, depending on the price parity, Russia will be able to export and supply to India.
Great. Thank you. Thierry, you're promoted to the Ukrainian and Moldovan expert. I know you've got some fairly strong opinions, so let's see.
Thank you very much for this audience to attend our panel. I will introduce a little bit some Western sunflower seed crop out of Ukraine, Moldova, Bulgaria, and Romania. Last year, as you know, that the sunflower seed crops were very much affected and much smaller than expected, which created a tension during the August and September month at the end of the old crops. And this summer, the new crop has been also again very much affected in the south of all these countries. The northern parts are pretty good, but not yet harvested. So all of these, the south were harvested in a bit earlier with very low yield. Out of Ukraine, the country was expecting the new crop around between 13.5 and 14 million ton, but the reality now has been revised to 12.5 million ton in Ukraine. From Moldova, the same. This year we were expecting around 900,000 ton of seeds, revised around 820,000 ton. From last year, we had barely 650,000, not much more. Romania is pretty good as well. This year we should have about 2.1, 2.2, but the northern part is very good, but harvested late. So that's why we are getting some late crops, and it created tension into the markets. European Union also had some losses in the sunflower seed production. Last year was around 8.3 million, if I'm not mistaken, altogether, the European Union. And this year, we were expecting a little bit more than 9 million, but it has been revised around 8.7 million already. The main losses are coming from the south of France and Spain as well. All again due to this hot and dry summertime. Between March and April, everything was fine, but the heat wave damaged a lot the new crops in the southern of Europe. So, but the main competition, what I would say that for all of these countries, it's coming from Turkey. Indeed, Turkey is a pretty big, I would say, partner and competitor. Meantime, Turkey is 80 million more population, and they need to buy a lot of oil seeds and vegetable oil. They are like the goalkeeper on the Black Sea, and they are buying a lot of oil from Russia, Ukraine, and all other countries. But this year, in the normal crop condition, Turkey has 1.6, 1.5 million ton of sunflower seeds for 2 million ton crushing capacity of sunflower only. This year, they should have barely 1 million, probably 1.1 million, not much more. So they started already to buy a lot of sunflower seeds and sucking the seeds from all the Black Sea countries, available seeds from Romania, Bulgaria, and also from Moldova. This is not that much affecting Ukraine and Russia, which have some export duties to protect from export. So the Turks started to raise up a lot the sunflower seed prices on the Black Sea, making the crush margin almost negative, actually, again, and for the second year on the row. So, but on the top of the seeds, they will have to import also a lot of oil again. So all of this create tension with late harvest, spot demand. This is justifying actually the six-port market strong and keep stronger on the nearby positions with an inverse, and if we calculate with a sun oil as a premium of around $130, $140 above the bean oil, for example. But we can see that the spread between the sun oil and the rape oil in Europe is not that much, is around $30, $35 spread, not that much. In spite of the import of canola oil from Canada going to Spain and other and north of Europe for biodiesel use. So this is what we could say actually.
Okay. Bruno, last chance to have some sun seeds in the world. Argentina, how are we going to look for crop 2026?
Okay. First of all, hello everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation to be in this panel. As my colleagues mentioned, internationally the sunflower production, it's been quite lower than expected some a few months ago, and that's something we could reflect in the prices, in the FOB prices globally in international markets. And that was something that permit to Argentina to export good volumes of sun oil in the recent months. And if we focus about the new campaign of Argentina 25-26, we are expecting an increase in the planted area. We have to take into account that we are navigating the last quarter of our 24-25 campaign, and we reach a production of 4.9 million tons, and for the next year we are expecting a production of 5.1 million tons, and that's a really good level of production for us with an area or planted area of 2.5 million hectares that we are expecting now. And this could be a record in at least more than 15 years in Argentina. So with the production of, if we reach a production of 5.1 million tons the next year, and if we consider also our initial stocks that are rising also, we could have a total supply of 6.1 million tons. And this is a record of at least 24th year for our country. And it's so important, the volumes that we are crushing in the recent months, also our export volumes that we are reaching. And that is related to the pace of the farmer selling that it's ongoing really well in Argentina because of the good prices locally and internationally. We are being so competitive at international level, and that was, I think, allow us to export good volumes, and the farmer selling is ongoing really well. Yep.
And just a question, I understand that you think there will be, by the end of December, a carry out of sunseeds that is about 500,000 tons more than normal.
Yes, that's important. We are having more supply in the markets. The crush industries are well supplied. We are exporting a good pace, but in the second half of the year, it's more difficult for us to export because the production of Ukraine and Russia, European Union enter to the markets, and it makes it quite difficult to be competitive. We are competitive now, and it's quite uncommon. For example, in September, we were operating with discounts from the European Union and Ukraine or the Black Sea region in general, and it's not so common. And that's permit us to export really good volumes of sunflower oil to India. That is one of the most important market that we have of our sun oil, and represent the 30% of our share of our exports. And related to the stocks, we almost have near of 0.4 million tons. That's our average in the last 5 campaigns, and this year we are expecting an increase to 1 million tons. And this is what could permit us to have a really good total supply for the next year. And there are an important point there, because the farmer selling of the new campaign, the anticipate sales of the farmers are ongoing in a really good pace. So that's a good thing for us, that in the first quarter of the next year, the market of sun oil will be well supplied also for Argentina and the other important regions or the major exporters and producers.
Okay, great. Just to summarize then, we've just gone through the crops. Globally, we've kind of gone from what was everybody talking 3 to 4 million tons extra sunseeds in the world. We've now significantly reduced that, and from just adding up the numbers we've just discussed, and if we include the potential for Kazakhstan to increase production by 200,000 or 300,000, we still only get to a marginal increase of sunseeds globally for the next year of about 1.8, maybe 2 million tons, and potentially 500,000 tons extra stocks in Argentina. So it's not like we've got a burdensome availability, and of course we've also got to get through the whole Argentine growing season. Now I want to touch on stocks, because like we mentioned in Argentina, there's quite good stocks. If you look at global stocks of sun oil, they are actually considerably lower than normal. And I'd like to start with Akshay, because on paper, India has roughly 400,000 tons less sun oil stocks than normal. Normal's a big word, but it does look like the pipeline in India is a little drier than it would be normally.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan, and thanks for having me on this panel. Well, as regards to sun oil stocks in India, yes, the market was obviously in the huge inverse earlier for the new crop. So the Indian buyers have been reducing our imports for the last 4 months. We were averaging maybe 200,000 tons of imports per month for the last 3 or 4 months. So we've been eating into our stocks, and the stocks levels with the refiners are very low. So we, for instance, at the peak, we may, in the last year, we would have had 2 months of inventory on the ground. Now we are sitting on, the average is about a month or 40 days. Now we're sitting on barely about 15 days of inventory. So we're waiting for each vessel to connect, and we're sweating it out if there are any delays. So the stock levels on sun oil are definitely tight, which is reflected in the parities that, sun oil is perhaps the only oil in the last month or so which was trading at a parity. Bean oil and palm oil were all at a disparity.
In the past, we've always talked about Indian inelastic demand for sun oil, and you say that it's roughly 200,000 tons a month. is that completely inelastic, or if we stick at these very high premiums for sun oil, do we even lose some of that 200,000 tons a month?
Well, so, if we just go back 2 years and we measure normally April to March, financial year wise. So April 23 to March 24, I think it was, where India imported about 3.5 million tons. That was the time when sun oil was even money to palm oil or even went below palm oil and bean oil. So India then imported an average of 300,000 at that. The previous April to March, 24 to 25, I think it would have been about 2.7 million ton roughly. So you can see the drop as sun oil in the last campaign, obviously with the lower crops, went into a premium over other oils, right? Now, we believe that it should be 200,000 tons a month of average import, assuming premium going up to about $80 to $100 over bean oil and palm oil. If it stretches to 140, 150 where it was recently, then you start shaving that down a bit. So you go to maybe 180K, 170 to 180K core imports. So you start losing demand. We are beginning to see soya oil, which in the southern part of India was very difficult to sell because the customers don't like, the fishy smell, etc. But at a certain price, that's beginning to move as well. So, and it's very competitive with palm oil, right? So earlier palm oil was the oil which would gain at this premium when sun oil goes to this premium, but bean oil is now beginning to make a dent. So we are having our importers in the south who are booking 10,000, 15,000 ton kind of shipments. We haven't seen that in ever maybe.
Okay, very clear. So to then put that in perspective, as we all know, sun oil is very, very much more complicated than many because there is this global inelastic demand at a price that is immovable. And so what we've just discussed from the availabilities of sun oil, we are going to roughly have a 22.5 million ton availability of sun oil globally in the next 12 months. Of that, the inelastic demand, where there is everywhere, is about 21 million tons, but that can decrease probably by 500,000 tons if we go up to extreme premia. So we then have, at the current market, we have potentially an overhang in the world market of about 1.5 million tons of sun oil that has to find a home at competitive rates. And as Akshay just pointed out very clearly, it kind of has to be less than $50 a ton premium to palm oil or soybean oil to make a difference. But then we have the big challenge, which I think is everybody's fighting with, and Anton can explain very clearly, is we're all dependent on farmer selling. Farmers are rich. Farmers are not keen to sell stuff if they don't have to. And I think they're going to be the biggest impediment to fast flows of sun oil into the market in the next especially 3 or 4 months.
Jonathan, I would like to add that to add to Akshay's words and your words that we currently see lower stocks and some uncovered demand for October, November, not only in India but also in other countries like Turkey is open for October and November. Iran is open for October, November. We see some demand coming from East Mediterranean countries like Egypt. So, of course, buyers want lower prices. They try to wait and see market development. But coming to Russian or the Black Sea market, I can give some statistic. Last Friday on the 19th, Russian Agri Ministry released some harvesting update. And the ministry has showed very low sunflower seed yield, 1.3 metric tons per hectare.
You're not allowed to go back on the crop. Tell me when the farmer's going to sell.
Well, of course, farmers have become very reserved, very conservative sellers so far. We see very low origination pace, intake pace. Everybody is complaining. Russian crushers have to pay up every 2-3 days domestically in order to have something, to buy something, and not even against exporting veg oils, but also to commit domestic packaged oil sales and commitments.
But when we talk about farmer selling, how resilient is the Russian farmer to actually sell sun seeds at current prices of, I understand they're like 3,500 rubles, 3,600 rubles.
39 and even up to 40.
Okay. Will they sell it there, or are they going to wait?
I think they're going to wait a little bit. Russian farmers have got variety of agricultural commodities between grains and oil seeds. So if they don't like oilseed prices, sun seeds or rapeseeds or beans, they can easily sell some grains, corn, just to get some cash. Yeah, so we have seen this in the last season, 24-25. Russian farmers have got relatively good stability, financial stability, and then they can be flexible in selling grains or oil seeds to get some cash if they need. So we expect them to be a little bit more conservative next 1-2 months. Weather conditions are fine. Harvesting is going on with very good weather conditions, dry seeds, so they don't need to deliver these seeds to silos for drying or whatever. So there is no necessity to sell immediately.
Okay. Thierry, do you have a view on the west of the Black Sea, on how the farmer's going to sell or not?
Yes, indeed. The farmers, they don't have the same, I would say, market approach as we, as industrial or traders. They are counting on per hectares, how much they spend and how much they're going to get. In the south of the countries, the Black Sea countries, Russia, they lost yield, but they didn't lose only the sunflower seed. They lost as well some yield on the corn and other cultures. So the resilience is coming that they are trying to recover their losses on the corn, for example, and trying to hold on the seeds to improve the price of the seeds and to recover the losses. So that's why their resilience is coming. I mean, it's not if the market goes down, if Chicago goes down, if Argentina is releasing the beans, they are not. They said, okay, we're gonna wait, no problem. We are not on the rush to sell. That's making the market pretty tense and prices high.
Yeah. I see that. So, Bruno, do you think the Argentine farmer, when he gets his 5.5 million tons of sun seeds, will he sell them?
Yes, I think that the farmers are selling at a good pace. As I said before, if we see the current campaign, 24-25, the farmers just sell the 80% of the production, and that is 10 percentage points above the average of our last 5 years. So they are selling the production at a really good pace. And if we look the new campaign 25-26, they just sold near of 0.5 million tons. And if we look 3 years ago, this number was 0.08 million tons. It's really low. So they are anticipating the sale of the grains of the sun seeds in Argentina, and we think that we will have the industry is really well supplied in the new year to crush and export with competitive prices, I think.
Okay. Akshay, final word on what I call the pipeline effect. We've just established that stocks are a little bit low, but I'm assuming that for consumers to actually start accumulating stocks, we have to go to relatively cheap prices relative to other oils.
Yes, Jonathan. So in the previous statement that I made, that we are tight on stocks right now and we are waiting for vessels to connect, but we do have sufficient bookings. Like even September shipments, I think will be decent, will be north of 200 comfortably. October, Indians have booked decent quantities, maybe 250k perhaps, and partial November bookings also there. So now we have stocks, whatever we have on the ground, and we have stocks in transit. Demand in September actually has been a little disappointing, right? And this is the beginning of the peak festive period, so hopefully it improves. but it is not as excellent as we thought it would be earlier, right? And then at these premiums now, sun oil demand will definitely suffer. So that will help extend our pipeline a little bit compared to what we thought it would have done earlier. So we have a little bit of time on our side where we can wait, we can afford to wait for the Russian or the Union or the European farmer to start reducing their prices and become more competitive to other oils. And then, of course, once it comes to more reasonable levels, the Indians are definitely waiting to buy, and we will cover our November and December shipments for sure if we get a much more attractive price. So I think it's a game of patience between us and the origin, and let's see.
Who blinks first?
Who blinks first?
Okay, we've been asked to wrap up here, but just so that if I try and summarize the sort of, let's say, the view on the sun oil market is crops are a little bit less good than everybody expected. So we're talking about now a marginal increase in oil. We're stuck with oil, but marginal increase of oil, maybe 1 to 1.5 million tons compared to last year. There's no reason for at current prices to think that demand will expand. So potentially over time, any very big premiums of sun oil are a little bit high today relative to what we'll probably see later in the year. And why is that? Is because as we get closer to the Argentine harvest, they seem to be the main farmers who are relatively happy with prices and need to sell something. So we're going to have kind of a two-level market, I think, is like in the next 3 months is who blinks first, the Black Sea farmer or the consumer. But the consumer has the kind of luxury of knowing that the relative price of sun oil is quite high. And so we're going to have a very, I would imagine, volatile couple of months as we head towards an eventual Argentine crop. But of course, we have to get the Argentine crop out of the ground. It's only just being planted now. So we've got a potential weather issue or weather market coming into Argentine sunseeds. So net, I'm afraid to say it's going to be very complicated. You can argue that sun oil is a little bit overpriced today on a relative basis. And let's not go into whether palm oil and soybean oil are cheap or expensive. But on a relative basis, it's a little bit expensive. But it's not like we have overly burdensome availabilities of sun oil. But it's probably a little bit on the heavy side eventually. Anybody, any final comments or wishes? Because we're supposed to stop when the clock says 0. Thierry.
The seeds are available. The real question is at which price?
Who blinks first? Yeah. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Very interesting. Very helpful.